Hello, class. Time for the latest installment in the wide world of poetry. And today we're going to be talking about the sonnet. So as you'll recall, you were introduced to the sonnet form in the presentation that I did on poetic forms. But we're going to dig down a little deeper into this specific form as we begin our study of Shakespeare sonnets specifically. So let's talk about the sonnet generally then. So we're going to discuss its origins and talk about what is happening with respect to semi-contemporary sonneteers. Okay, so what the heck is a sonnet anyway? So you'll probably recall from our discussion on poetic forms, basically 14-line poem, and I'm going to touch on the two basic types that we have here. So the first sonnet is making its appearance in 13th century Sicily, and its first practitioner is pictorially represented here to the right, Jacopo or Giacomo da Lentini. Okay, so the characteristics of this early sonnet is that that da Lentini uses popular language, so he's using Italian or what we now refer to as Italian, as opposed to Latin. Okay. It is meant to be sung. So say is accompanied by someone on a lyre maybe, or a lute, something of that nature. So the Italian sonetto means roughly little sound or little song. Okay, so initially this form combines two Sicilian quatrains rhyming A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Okay, so we know that we would normally think of those 8 lines as an octave. Okay, and then the sestet rhyming CDE, CDE. Okay, so the rhyme scheme then varies for the next roughly 100 years. Okay, as we talked about, people that are writing music and dealing with art of all kinds will once introduced to a particular sort of approach, will then write in that way and then start to expand on it. So this is what's happening for about 100 years with this particular form. So what ends up happening is that this handsome chap, Francesco Petrarca, that we know as Petrarch, so he's a Tuscan poet, lived in the early 14th century. So between 1327 and 1366, he writes a sequence of 366, I mean, think about it, sonnets and canzoni. That collection is called the Rima Sparse. Okay, so these poems more or less chronicle his amorous obsession with a woman named Laura, married, mother of 11 children. Holy smokes. So you want to talk about your unrequited love, there you go. All right, so Petrarch changes the sonnet topically, all right? And so for him, love then becomes the central deal. Because he knows that he cannot, marry this woman, be her lover and be, an honorable man or anything of that nature. And so now he's basically using this literary form as an outlet for exploration of things, philosophical and amorous and all these sorts of things. Okay, so there's the lovely Laura. So he uses the sonnet to explore love in its ideal versus its temporal possibilities. Love as a source of spiritual metamorphosis, as a barrier to, and paradoxically means to achieve religious transcendence. Okay, so now here are some specifics relative to the Italian sonnet that Petrarch formed. Okay, so it's a 2-part sonnet. It's an octave followed by a sestet. Okay, so this change in rhyme scheme indicates a change in subject matter. I'll talk about that in a moment. All right, so this type of rhyming, ABBA, ABBA, is also known as a double envelope quatrain. So rhetorically, what's happening in the Italian sonnet is the octave presents a situation, an attitude, a problem, perhaps poses a question that the second part of the sonnet, the sestet, comments on, resolves the situation, or answers the question that was offered up in the octave. Okay, now important concept here. Rhetorically, all right, so in terms of the argument of the piece, The volta or turn occurs at line 9. Okay, at the end of that first stanzaic form, the octave. Then we have a change in logic. Okay, that change occurs then at line 9. Okay, now the other feature worth mentioning is this, that the Italian sonnet is written to an 11-beat line. Generally speaking, starts with a stressed syllable, ends with a stressed syllable. Okay. Now, Italian sonnet is an argument. I've done presentations on this idea and using the sonnet as a way to practice writing. Just say take an argumentative essay, condense it down into the sonnet form, which is challenging and fun. Okay, but as an argument, it's 2 parts. Okay, so as you know, in a standard argument, you've got a premise or claim that you're stating, and then you're providing evidence in support of that claim. So this is what the Italian sonnet, generally speaking, does. Okay, so as I note here, the form is a beautiful incorporation of the sort of if-then structure of a syllogism that was originated, initiated by Aristotle. We have a nice picture of him there, hard at work, busting out some syllogisms, no doubt. Okay, if you wanted to read through this is a super emblematic of the Petrarchan sonnet. So if you want to press pause and then read this thing, I'm not going to unpack it because we're going to do that at the end of the, I'm going to unpack another sonnet, actually one by Robert Frost at the end of this presentation. So I'm not going to spend any time on this guy. Just understand that it's a great example of a Petrarchan sonnet in all its manifestations except one. The translator didn't make this a hendecasyllabic lines. These are all 10-beat lines. Okay, what are you gonna do? All right, so early 16th century. This cool-looking cat, Sir Thomas Wyatt, encounters the sonnet while traveling in Italy and Spain as an ambassador for King Henry VIII. All right, so Wyatt's a poet, and while he's down there, he sees that all the sort of artists, the literary types that he encounters and so forth. So if you travel to a foreign city and you're there for a while, you're going to try to seek out people that share your interests. So if you're a runner, you might try to find a running club or whatever. Okay, so Wyatt finds the people that are writing poetry, and he discovers that everyone's writing this form that was initiated then and perpetuated by Petrarch. Okay, so he brings the basic form. Okay, the Petrarchan model of the sonnet sequence. So Petrarch has got all these sonnets that are related thematically back to England. And so what Wyatt ends up doing is he adjusts the form as artists often do. Okay, and shows this preference for the couplet. So he's ending with the 2 rhymed lines. Okay, now this cat right here, Henry Howard, a friend of Wyatt, establishes, so he takes the model that Wyatt brings back and essentially formalizes it in a new way. And it's the way that ends up being the standard for the English sonnet for, even till now. Okay, so he establishes the model then of 3 quatrains and a couplet with the new rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. So you should probably be able to commit that to memory. Because it just almost never changes, right? So if somebody says, "Oh, it's a rhyme scheme for an English sonnet," you can bust that out, okay, and show your prodigious knowledge. So this pattern is more congenial to the rhyme-poor English language. Italian, Spanish, but Italian in particular, lots and lots of words end in vowels, and so when you have a limited number of ways to end words, okay, then it just gives us all kinds of opportunities for rhyming. English, not so much. Okay, so this allows not only then this business of being able to rhyme, but as we're going to see in the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and point out that Henry VIII, paranoid rascal, thinking that Howard was getting busy with Anne Boleyn in prisons and then executes him for treason. Ouch. Got to be careful who your friends are. All right, so not only then does the quatrain and couplet give you some wiggle room with respect to rhyming, but if you think about each of the stanzas as something like paragraphs, okay, then we've got all kinds of flexibility about where little thematic breaks can occur. All right. So typical rhyme scheme, as I said before, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. This is now typically written in iambic pentameter. So English is roughly an iambic type language, okay? So the sort of tonic syllable is the second, not the first, okay, in most English words, all right? So the Volta then typically occurs with the couplet. The Shakespeare often turns his argument at line 9, all right? So, and the places you're going to see the turn is going to be quite often where there is the use of, you know, some sort of conjunction, maybe a but, yet. You would also have transitions like however, okay, as a way to shift us into the next part of the poem. Okay, so Sonnet 130. I said before that you know, the poets that Henry Howard was encountering in Italy, you know, they're all writing these sonnets. And so when Shakespeare is writing, okay, at the height of his powers, all, you know, poets all over, you know, London in particular are writing sonnets. Okay. Now this sonnet is from his sonnet sequence of 154 sonnets. This is the third in what are known as the Dark Lady sonnets. So at some point in Shakespeare's life, he becomes either enamored with, emotionally, sexually involved with a dark-skinned woman. So either of African descent or perhaps from India. Nobody knows for sure, but he is writing poems about her, okay? And while his contemporaries are writing poems that are these sort of hyperbolic celebrations, if you will, of the women about whom they're writing, me generally, okay, where, you know, the woman's you know, eyes are as bright as the sun, and their you know, their teeth are like pearls, and their you know, their blonde hair is like the beaten gold of you know, angels' harp strings, okay, and their you know, their skin is, you know, as white as snow, and their lips are, you know, red as rubies, okay, all this kind of stuff, right? Shakespeare's poem here is essentially a clapback at these poets who are writing this bull bleat about the women that they are focused on. Okay, so here it is, Sonnet 130. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun or brown. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfume is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Here's the turn. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Some marvelous dismount couplet. So, yet by heaven, okay, I think my love as rare. So it's not only his love for her, but also she as his love, okay, is rare as any she. So it's a backhanded slap at the women that the other sonneteers are talking about, because he's suggesting that they are lying about them in all the comparisons that they are making, okay, and he is not. Go William Shakespeare. Okay, so Edmund Spenser. So there's another type of sonnet that was developed by Edmund Spenser. So I'm going to go super quick through this. His typical rhyme scheme is A B A B, B C B C, C D C D E E. So it's a much more sort of interlocking type orientation than the English sonnet is. So this interlocking pattern sets up distinct line groups. Each develops a specific but closely related idea. And then he uses but or yet in line 9. But the Volta, Okay, his turn in logic often occurs at line 12. So what this does then is it presents you with an opportunity, or presents him with an opportunity to give us a surprise. Okay, there at the end of line 12. Okay. All right. So here we go. A couple of other types. Some are still, so as we move now forward into time that's closer to where we're sitting now. So some contemporary sonnets are still 14 lines, and some are not. Even Shakespeare's Sonnet 126 is only 12 lines long. Okay, so again, playing with the form, again, in service of some sort of purpose. Okay. Some have unconventional rhyme schemes, and we're going to see that right now. So, for example, this is a sonnet written by Percy Shelley. And again, what I'm going to do here is I'll offer you the opportunity to press pause on the recording and take a look at what it is that Shelley's doing here. I'm not going to unpack this one because I'm going to spend a bunch of time on this that Frost poem that I was telling you about. Here's a good example. Okay. All right, now here's a nice one. I might spend just a couple minutes on this one. This is by Julia Alvarez from her 33 sonnet sequence. And I'm going to read it out loud because it's a great use of the Italian sonnet in a certain kind of way. Okay, so you're going to see what happens. So I want you to just look at the sonnet on paper, and you'll notice in the early part of the poem, no punctuation. Okay, so see as I read it how that fact mirrors what it is that she's talking about. So we've talked about form following function. This is a great example of that. Okay. Sometimes the words are so close. I am more who I am when I'm down on paper than anywhere else. As if my life were practicing for the real me, I become unbuttoned from the anecdotal and unnecessary and unpressed down to the figure of the poem, line by line, the real text a child could understand. Why do I get confused living it through? Those of you lost and yearning to be free, who hear these words, take heart from me. I was once in as many drafts as you, but briefly, essentially, here I am. Who touches this poem touches a woman. So this is a marvelous poem. It's got the sort of, so this is what's called an ars poetica. It is a poem about the act of writing poetry. Okay. And also, she is sort of giving a nod to Walt Whitman. I don't know where that went. Holy smokes. Okay, so he wrote a poem in which he said, who touches this poem touches a man. So she is responding then to that. Sorry about that brain cramp. All right, so here we go. This is the poem I was talking about, The Investment by Robert Frost. Love this poem. Okay, so here we go. Over back where they speak of life as staying, couldn't call it living for it ain't. There was an old house renewed with paint, and in it a piano loudly playing. Out in the plowed ground in the cold, a digger, among unearthed potatoes standing still, was counting winter dinners one a hill with half an ear to the piano's vigor. All that piano and new paint back there, was it some money suddenly come into? Or some extravagance young love had been to? Or old love on an impulse not to care, not to sink under being man and wife, but get some color and music out of life? Okay, so I'm going to do this as a mini explication, okay, to illustrate how form follows function. So here's a poem about a couple, right? And the investment that we're talking about on one level has to do with money, okay? So the house is newly painted, okay? And there's a piano that has been bought for presumably the wife, okay? She's up there just absolutely banging away. Now, the idea is that where they are living is over back, okay? You couldn't call it living for it ain't. So this is a sort of side comment about the fact that they are impoverished. How impoverished are they? The man here, okay, the digger, among unearthed. So plowed ground in the cold. Plowed ground, when we think of plowed ground, we think of like spring, right? Promise and all this kind of stuff. But no, look how Frost sort of doles out that line for us, and we get these marvelous surprises. So he's standing in the cold because he's been digging in the ground, unearthing potatoes. This is sort of hearkening back to Robert Frost's roots, if you will, in Ireland. Okay, potato famine that brought his family and others like his family to the United States. So how impoverished are they? He's having to count maybe the least sexy vegetable in the on the planet is potatoes, to see, do they have enough to eat? Because he spent money on paint and he spent money on the piano, but he's willing to sacrifice maybe finer sort of cuisine, because if mama's happy, everybody's happy. So spending the money on the paint for the house and on the piano means that the investment he's making in the relationship is going to bear fruit in happiness. Okay. Now I'm gonna walk you through how this poem looks. Okay, line by line. All right. So over back where they speak of life as staying, and I don't know if you can see this or not. Okay, so we talked about the two types of sonnets, English and Italian, right? Italian, hendecasyllabic, 11-beat line. Yes? Okay. And remember the rhyme scheme, ABBA, ABBA, and then some variation of CDE, CDE, something of that nature. Okay, so something that we have not talked about under the category of meter is this. A line that ends in a stressed syllable is known as a masculine line. And one that ends in an unstressed syllable is known as a feminine line. Now, here we are. We've got this poem about a man and a woman, a couple, right? Okay, so this first line begins with a stressed syllable. It's 11 beats, and it ends in an unstressed syllable. Okay, so it is a feminine ending. Now look at the next line. 10 beats, alternating between the 11-beat line and the 10-beat line. And check this out. We're alternating also the arrangement of the metrical pattern. This one begins with an unstressed syllable and ends with a stressed syllable. So we've got a feminine line and then a masculine line. Isn't that cool? All right, now, the rhyme scheme. It's looking a little bit like an Italian sonnet, right? Okay, there was an old house renewed with paint. Here we are again. Starts with a stress, ends with a stress. So here we've got that line, and now check it out. Begins with unstressed, ends with unstressed. So we've got the two feminine lines and the two masculine lines, and they're interwoven. Isn't that great? Following the rhyme scheme. Okay, so check this out. The next stanza, got a C line, okay? Once again, 11 beats. 11, 10, 10, 11, 11. Among unearthed potatoes standing still. Feminine line, masculine line, right? And here we are alternating again, 11 and 10. Was counting winter dinners one a hill. Okay, once again, we've got that stressed syllable, that masculine line. And can you guess how this is going to go? Yeah, this is going to work out, right? It's going to be a feminine line. Isn't that great? Okay, so notice something also delightful. This is a poem about couples. And look what we have here. We have already two couplets, the two B lines and the two D lines. Isn't that great? Robert Frost, gotta love him. Okay, all that piano and new paint back there. New paint back there. So what you're going to see in this point is that the metrical pattern, the stressed syllables sort of heats up. So he starts throwing in trochees. So look at all the trochees in here because he's emphasizing something for us, okay? As the poem begins its move toward its finale, all right? So was it some money suddenly come into? All right, so it's the rhetorical question, like what the heck's happening over there? So once again, now you would have expected that the E line here would have been what, another 11, but he's shifting it up. He's shifting it up. Okay. Again, this alternating thing, like a good relationship, right? Okay. And notice, this is so great. Some extravagance young love had been to. So you got a 4-syllable word there in extravagance, okay, which is an extravagant word just on its own, okay? So I'm telling you, Frost is making these decisions on purpose in service of the overarching point of the poem, all right? And then now, or old love, on an impulse not to care, not to sink under being man and wife, but get some color and music out of life. So look at that. Double B's, double D's, double F's, double G's. So you've got 4 couplets because it's a poem about a couple. Of course you want extra couplets. And again, you've got that marvelous alternating of the feminine and masculine rhyme scheme, and the alternating of the 10 and 11 beats. So this is just a marvelous example of how form follows function. So this is absolutely a poem to admire with all your poetic heart. And I hope you admire it as much as I do. So that's it for us in this presentation on the sonnet. Stay tuned for our next presentation, which is going to be on Shakespeare's sonnet sequence specifically. All right, peace.